Okay, so here we are with the Arturo Fuente Oro Oscuro Fuente 5.625 by 46. So it's like 5 3/4 of an inch by 46 ring gauge, in between there, right? Between 5.5 and 5 3/4. So I kind of looked up a little blurb on the internet to find out a little bit more about this cigar, and it says these fine cigars are composed of the highest quality binder, fill, and wrapper tobacco cultivated in the heart of the Dominican Republic. The specially selected Fuente Opus X Rosado Oro Oscuro wrapper has been pampered to be extra aged and fermented, giving a cigar a robust, balanced, and dark finish. Fuente Opus X Oro Oscuro is a full-bodied Maduro version of the first ever Dominican Puro Opus X. So this is considered a Maduro version of the Opus. So there's a lot of people out there that enjoy the Maduro cigar, the Maduro wrapper on there, and I'm kind of in between on all that stuff. I'm not really for or against a Maduro wrapper. I just kind of, like I said, I've always said I like the way a cigar. If I like the way a cigar smokes, that's all that matters to me, looks wise, whatever. So anyway, this cigar here, you know, I mean, it's a little bit blotchy wrapper on there, some seams in there, not that many veins. Great bands though. I showed this cigar to a friend of mine who really doesn't smoke cigars at all, and he's like, "Oh my God, those bands are beautiful," and they are. The bands are absolutely gorgeous on this cigar. So, so I'm going to give this thing a cut and a light, and then we'll go from. Okay, the batteries on my microphone went out, so I'm currently in the first third of the cigar right now. Unfortunately, the audio cut out. So here I'm going to kind of go in the beginning. So there's the way that the cigar started out, which most non-Cuban cigars started out for me, is the fact that there's really heavy pepper in the beginning of the cigar. This was no different in the beginning. And there was like a spiciness with an earthiness in here in the beginning of the cigar. And so really nice creamy smoke though, and really rather smooth and creamy. Not a lot of bitterness in there, and just really nice starting out in the beginning here. And the finish on the palate is a really nice lingering long finish on the palate, which has that really heavy spice and that really heavy earth on there on the palate, and the retro as well. And to me this is different than like the regular Opus X cigars, whereas those are kind of a sweeter, brighter kind of a finish and retro on the cigar. This is richer. It's got like kind of a richness to it with that earth and that spice, as opposed to kind of like that cinnamon raisin kind of sweeter finish and retro on the palate on the regular Opus line. And to me that just it's kind of like the difference between vanilla and chocolate ice cream, where vanilla is sweet, vanilla and chocolate ice cream are both sweet, but the chocolate has that kind of a richness to it, and this absolutely definitely has that richness to it. So I want to give a shout out to High Times Cellars and Sean Patrick in particular for hooking me up with these cigars, along with some other ones that I have that I got over there at High Times the other day. Some Rare Pink and some of these other Oro Oscuros, the Robusto, and some Angel Share that he had in there as well. So, but this is the first one I've smoked out of the batch, and so far this cigar has been kind of a pleasant surprise compared to the other Opus cigars that I've smoked in the past. And I don't know, they're what was it, the Opus 13 or whatever it was. I think that one had a Maduro wrapper on it as well, which might have been a precursor to this one here. But like I said, it's a richer, kind of a chewier experience with this cigar as opposed to the other Opus. That's just me. I'm some knucklehead on the internet with an opinion and a palate. But one good thing about Opus 2 is that just the construction is usually flawless. I might have to touch this thing up once, maybe twice throughout the entire cigar, and that's about it. So, I mean, it's just, they're usually a good cigar. Now, you're paying for that, and usually on the secondary market, you're going to pay a lot more just because of the rarity of these things. They only come out a few times a year, and so people are definitely kind of taking advantage of that, I guess, so to speak. So anyway, it is what it is. Now, one thing about these cigars as well, in general, is the fact that I don't know what it is with the glue or whatever, and the wrapper is a bit thin at times, but normally I'll smoke this thing down. Normally I'll take the band off the cigar right away. I just do. That's just me. But with these cigars in general, usually somehow the glue gets affixed to the band and the wrapper, and if you pull it off too soon, it'll take a bit of the wrapper with it, which you don't want to do. So I'll smoke this thing down to where the band will start to heat up and melt the glue, and that way I have a better chance of pulling the band off and not pulling a piece of wrapper away from it. It has adhered to the band. So that's kind of a little heads up for you on these cigars in general, especially with these big bands, and the glue gets kind of crazy on there. So I'll normally smoke this thing down, like I said, down to here before I take this band off, and down to here before I take this band off to let the glue heat up. And that's kind of a general thing. It doesn't always work, especially if you're a slow smoker and you don't heat up the cigar a lot. But and like I said, it's a general thing, but it does work some of the time, not all the time. And that's just something as a little hint, especially when smoking these cigars. Now, coming down here from the first third, and we're kind of getting into the second third, there's a bit of a citrus note, like a tangliness on the palate, that's starting to develop on the palate, along with that spiciness and that earthiness in there, which is kind of a nice little bit of a transition. It doesn't seem to be disconnected. Very good balance on the cigar so far, I think. And the strength and the body on this thing is fairly full. I mean, I'd say full, definitely, starting out. And I would imagine that the cigar is going to be full all the way down to the end, too, as well. So, with that, I am going to smoke this thing down the rest of the way into this band somewhere in here, the second band, and I will be back with the tasting notes. Back with the tasting notes on the Fuente Opus X Oro Oscuro Fuente. What a mouthful. So like I said, the cigar opened up with that spiciness and that earthy sweetness in the retro and on the palate, and with the very long lingering finish of spice and earth to start out with. And the spice was definitely the predominant note throughout the entire cigar. The finish was definitely a long lingering finish throughout the entire cigar as well. As the cigar burned down through the first third into the second third, like I mentioned previously, there was a spice and a kind of a citrus tangliness that presented itself on the palate as the earthiness tamped back and became almost non-existent in there. It was there, but it was basically mostly a spicy and a citrus tangliness on the palate. And then the retro was spicy and fruity. So there was a fruity retro in there, more like kind of an apricot or a peach or a nectarine, that kind of a fruitiness. Not a dark fruit like a currant or a cherry or something like that. It was definitely a brighter fruitiness in there. As the cigar burned down through the second third and the last third, that fruitiness went away along with that citrus tangliness, and the cigar became very earthy again, and with that spice mixed in there, with a hint of a chocolate as well in the retro, and on the palate as well. So the cigar became very earthy, spicy, with that hint of chocolate in there. And there was still that sweetness in there, but it was more of a rich sweetness that presented itself in the last third, which was quite nice. The cigar had that rich, creamy, chewy smoke throughout the entire cigar with a lot of balance. There was a lot of balance in this cigar as well. The construction of the cigar was good with only one touch-up, and there was plenty of smoke production. And the cigar was got a little bit bitter in the last third here, but really not that much. The cigar definitely didn't have a lot of tannins and a lot of bitterness to the cigar whatsoever. The transitions in the cigar also were distinct but not disconnected, which was very enjoyable for me. It made a very nice smoking experience throughout the entire cigar. I've smoked other cigars in the past where they have these certain transitions in there and they're disconnected and it just doesn't add up. And for this cigar here, it was very balanced and very nice and non-disconnected for me personally, but I'm just some knucklehead on the internet with an opinion, so take it for what it's worth. Just to do a quick plug here, the Facebook group, Smoking Vintage Cigars. If you haven't joined that, go over there and join the group. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, dude90077. And if you have any cigar questions with pictures, don't send them to Instagram. Email them to me at dude90077@gmail.com. And finally, the Patreon account, donate $3, $5, or $10. It's patreon.com/DaveDude. And all your contributions are greatly appreciated for me to continue doing the work on this channel with documentation of cigars. So in finality on this cigar, I think that the cigar is ready to smoke now. And, it's a full-body, full-strength cigar, definitely all the way through. I think you'll enjoy just the balance in the cigar, and then just the rich, thick, creamy, chewy smoke that presents itself throughout the entire cigar. I'd have to give this thing a CA rating right now of around 93, about 9 smoke rings. Definitely a good cigar. One other point of note here, I'm going to put up a picture real quick, and like I mentioned earlier, with that glue, you can see how the first band, when it came off, it pulled up that wrapper a little bit, and it is what it is. That's kind of like one of the things with an Opus cigar, just that they go crazy with that glue, so be careful. The second band came off with no problems whatsoever, but like I said, be careful on these cigars and try and smoke them as close to the band as possible and heat up that glue. Anyway, I have rambled on quite enough, and that's enough out of me.